Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are going to be doing another recent reads. Now, I know this is not my usual setup. However, my life has imploded, and part of that implosion is that water actually got into my basement, which is where I keep all of my books. Now, it's okay. Everything is okay, and we've even gotten everything dried out, but it's still torn apart because we have some work we have to do to make sure that water doesn't keep coming in. So we have an unusual setup for my bookcases and some extra furniture next to me, and we're just gonna go with it. But I do have 6 books to talk to you about, 3 of them DNFs. Now, I normally do go in chronological order, but I did decide this time I'm going to talk about the books I read and then the books that I DNF'd. Just because it's a little bit easier to group them that way. But the very first thing that I finished is The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Older. And this is an adult science fiction gas lamp mystery novella. It's a lot of things all at once. But basically, we are in the very far future on a colony on Jupiter, and we are following our main characters of Mosa and Platy. And Mosa is a detective who is investigating what may or may not be a murder, and it leads her to the university, where she decides to employ the expertise of her ex-girlfriend Platy, and they are trying to solve this mystery together. I liked this, but I did not love it. And that is more of a me thing than this book thing, because it's gas lamp. So it has the feel of like the 1800s kind of thing, more of a historical. And it does have that writing, which is very much present in historicals, where it's much more formal, kind of stiff sentence structures and like vocabulary that's not like in use right now in modern day, which really sets the stage, which is really nice, but is always much harder for me to read. There's kind of like a window of opportunity when a book can really hook me into loving it. And with historicals or gas lamps or anything like that, that's usually when I'm trying to figure out the writing style. So I just kind of usually miss the opportunity to really love these kind of books, which is definitely a me thing, and I know it. But I did actually really like this otherwise. It's got a really interesting mystery that we've got going on. And I loved following our characters try to figure out what is going on. I don't think that it's a mystery that most people could solve, like readers could solve along with our characters, but I do think it's an interesting thing to watch them figure it out with the knowledge that they have that we don't really have. I don't know. It's just really, really well done. And so that was really fun. And I genuinely liked our characters, although I didn't really love our characters. They were fine. I liked that they were a little bit older, a little bit more mature. I definitely liked watching their relationship kind of unfold as they reconnected and trying to figure out if they wanted to continue on with the romantic relationship. That romance, by the way, is very, very low key. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a thing, but it's not. It's not even clear that it's a romance, like romantic feelings, until the very end. I only knew going in because I had heard other people talk about it as like it is romantic feelings, but how the characters are talking about it, it may be just like friendship. So very low key. But like, the other thing to note, the world building is like never explained. Just so you know, there's this colony on Jupiter, and I don't know how it works. It's not important. It's just kind of there, and don't question the science of it too much. Overall, I do think it actually was written really well, because the focus is on the mystery, which I think is done nicely. The world building is there as you need it and as it serves that mystery, but just don't expect too many questions to be answered. And I think people in general are liking the characters more than I did. So this is generally like pretty well written, but not necessarily like a book specifically for me. So that is why I liked it but did not love it, and ended up giving it 3.75 stars. And then the next book that I finished is Siren Queen by Nghi, which is another historical fantasy. It's a historical kind of book, but fantasy. And in this one, we are following our main character of Oluo as she is trying to make it in Los Angeles as an actress. And that is about as much as I can say. This is really, really interesting. So, talking about world building, so this is a kitchen sink kind of world where everything seems to be here. Like when I say that there is no explanation of the magic system, there is nothing. And it seems like there are a lot of different things pulled from different kinds of traditions. Like, I very definitely recognized like the ride that is described in the Ballad of Tam Lin, like that makes an appearance here in a form. So it's very interesting because there's so much in this world and none of it is explained. And somehow it still works. Like, I was fascinated because I am very much into world building and everything making sense and being explained and all of that kind of stuff. And this stuff doesn't necessarily get explained, but it worked for this book and it was fascinating. And I actually liked our main characters. Like, I liked how the main character was written. I don't actually like the main character. She's not terribly likable, and I didn't even necessarily root for her the entire time, but I was fascinated by her story and I really wanted to know more and know if she was going to make it. And like, I can't talk too much about the plot because it's not super obvious what the plot is until you reach the end. But I liked going on this adventure with this main character. And what I loved even more is that this seems to be written in the style more like a memoir. So Oluo, like occasionally we get these like little interjections from Luli, and it's clearly her looking back on this time in her life. And she's, got interjections from like a person, and she says, well, Jane says this, and we haven't even met a Jane. And it's just, I don't know, I love that style of writing where it's like our main character writing a memoir. I have a thing for it, and it's really fantastic here. Nghi is also just a fantastic writer. I came to her as an author through the Singing Hills cycle novella series. And like, starting in novellas definitely served her well here. It just moves so
quickly,
and it was just really fun to read. So even though this would normally not be the kind of book that I like at all, it really worked for me, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I picked up and finished a book that I knew would work for me because it's from my favorite author, Seanan McGuire, and that is Sparrow Hill Road. And this is the first book in the Sparrow Hill Road series, which is an adult urban fantasy ghost kind of story. But this is a bind up of a bunch of short stories about Rose Marshall. And Rose is a ghost. And she's actually mentioned in another series that Seanan McGuire does called the Encrypted series, but you can read this book without having read Encrypted. It's actually totally fine. And it doesn't spoil anything that happens in Encrypted. So it's all good. But it's fascinating. And it's really, really hard to describe this world. But Rose is a ghost, and she occasionally comes and haunts like the living, but then she goes back to like the little ghost world. She's got her own adventures, sometimes that take place in the land of the living, and sometimes in the land of ghosts. And it's really interesting. I think that generally speaking, Seanan McGuire writes really nice short stories with like satisfying conclusions. So all of these, I actually generally liked all of them. I liked what we got in them, whether it was, diving more into Rose as a character, or how like this world works, or more backstory, or any of it. I really generally appreciated the mix of stories that we got, and the fact that the point of them all seemed to be slightly different. Like I said, whether it's diving into the backstory or the world or Rose as a character, I think that they all served a very lovely purpose and created this really nice whole in this book. And I will say that even though it feels like each story was full and complete, it also feels like it might be laying a foundation for whatever book comes next. And I'm really excited because there's 2 more books out already. So, and I just think that this is a really great first book. So I ended up giving it 4.25 stars. So those are the 3 books that I read, and I have 3 DNFs, and I generally put DNFs into one of 2 categories. There's like the DNF where I legitimately tried so hard and I just didn't like it. It's like, it's something I should have liked, but something wasn't working. And then there's the DNFs where they usually happen within the first 25 pages where I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to work for me. This is just not for me. It is not, I am just not going to do this. All 3 of my books fall into that second category. So I wanted to mention them mostly because 2 of them at least appeared on my May TBR, so I wanted to close the loop. And then one of them is just something that I want more people to know about. But the first one from my May TBR that I DNF'd is Mediocre by Ijeoma Oluo. This is an adult nonfiction about the mediocrity of white males and how it's shaped society. And I only got 14 pages in, and I really quickly realized, oh, this is going to be a book where I know like 80% of the facts already. And it's going to add in new information and new context and really pull it all together. But I'm not going to be learning a ton. And that's okay. Sometimes I'm really okay with that in a nonfiction, but I like to read those on audiobook. And so when I realized that, I actually did skim like a couple pages throughout the book, and that very much seems like that's what it's going to be. So this is really more of a soft DNF. If and when I pick it up again, I will be doing so on audio. I don't necessarily have a strong desire to, so I don't know if it'll ever happen, but yeah, that's because that's what kind of nonfiction it is going to be. Then I do really want to, if I'm going to read this, I'm going to read it on audio. And then I picked up, or the second book that I DNF'd is Of Dragons, Beasts, and Murder by Aliette de Bodard. 2 pages. I made it 2 pages, but it was like, this is reading like the middle of a series. And so I went to just go double check. Is this the middle of a series? It is. It's the novella that comes after the original trilogy of a series. And like one of the main characters in this novella is the main character in the 3rd book. I was just like, oh, I'm definitely not reading this then, because like I would have to read the first trilogy so that this trilogy so that I don't accidentally spoil myself. And so I was like, okay, am I even interested in reading the original trilogy? And I read the description and some reviews, and I'm not gonna read it. Like there's some things about it where I'm like, oh no, this is just not what I want it to be. So I am pulling this completely off of my TBR just because like I'm not going to read that trilogy, and given that it feels like the middle of a series, I think I'm going to be missing some important points. So I'm just going to go ahead and completely pull it off of my TBR. And then the last book that I DNF'd is something that was not on my TBR, but I wanted to mention it in case anybody was interested in it, and that is The Fresh Prince Project by Chris Palmer. How the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air Remixed America. And this is just how the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air got onto TV in the 90s and the changes, like the impact that it had, the changes that came about in television because of it. And I was very interested in this because I was very much a fan of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air growing up. However, as I was getting into it, the writing style really just didn't work for me. It is much more like lyrical, kind of rap-like, honestly, including rhyming words. And what I was finding was that I kept getting drawn out of the text, like basically constantly. And so I went ahead and DNF'd it at page 14. But just because that writing style was not working for me at all. But I love the idea of this book. And if you were into The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, then maybe this would be a good book for you. And that is it. That is everything I read and DNF'd recently. If you would like a preview, so I guess to have a preview of what I will be attempting to finish next, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I am like just under halfway through this book. I have to get through this because I'm going to have to take it back to the library soon. Like, I'm struggle busting because it is going so slow. There's so much happening and it still feels like it should be, and it's just taking forever. It should be going faster than what it is. So I'm struggling a little bit. It is so much better than A Court of Thorns and Roses by far, but I'm still just struggling a little bit with reading it. So I'm going to try really hard to finish this up soon because I just kind of want to be done. I want to know what happens. But I also just want to be done, I think is the right way to say that. So this is the only thing that I know for sure that I'm going to be picking up because that is all I can focus on, and whatever happens after that happens. But that is it. That is everything that I have. So if you have any thoughts or feelings about any of the books that I talked about, please leave me a comment down below. But that is it. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!